What often destroys relationships but is hardly talked about. Story 1. Professional athletes. We hear about them getting in trouble all the time, but there's so much that never sees the light of day. Aaron Hernandez is one example. He fell in drafts because the general public thought he had issues with pot. Find way later that the dude was a raging sociopath. Story 2. Silent resentment. Those unspoken grudges build up over time like dust bunnies under the bed, and one day they just explode all over the place. Story 3. Lack of fun. I know relationships aren't always easy. Work to do, baggage to deal with, real-life issues, differing goals. But man, once the fun stops, what's the point of going through the motions? You can just do it solo as well at such point. Story 4. Growth and change. 5 years is one thing. 10 years in, you're different people entirely. 15 years in, you either grow together or apart. Usually people in their 30s get to the point where they need to grow with their partner, and the opposite happens. People grow apart from one another. It's inevitable. Suddenly, what once was an amazing thing is now complete shit. Could be platonic, could be toxic, but it's shared by two people that are on uncommon ground wanting something to change, yearning for something more compatible, that fits better. I learned this in therapy at the point of our relationship either grows or it dies. I chose growth and I wanted to change. This is waiting for everyone. Story 5. Comprehension. It's easy, to some not all, to communicate the things you're feeling or things that need to be brought up. But I feel if your partner doesn't understand or try to, then it doesn't help with progression of said thing that was communicated. In my opinion, it's important to be understood. I want my partner to communicate with me, obviously, but I want to be able to understand and be understood while doing so. Story 6. Aging. As in, people in a committed long-term relationship for decades, and one person decides the other person is now too old and unattractive. Of course, that also means they've aged as well, but that isn't a reality they're willing to address. Story 7. My now wife and I laid this out about 6 months into us dating. Finances, where we would like to settle down, career goals, children, religion, retirement, values, etc. Neither of us really care about politics. We will read an article now or then and flip on the news, and we just discuss what is happening and reach a conclusion. My wife is very health-driven, and I'm very financially driven. I'm a CPA, and she is a dietitian. We respect each other's interests, and we honestly teach each other a lot about our given fields. We made sure we were textbook compatible before working out any kinks further down the line. And honestly, it is working, and we don't have really any of the issues mentioned in this thread. Story 8. I'd say the fear of missing out. I've seen and heard about so many people torpedo relationships that could have lasted a lifetime for self-discovery, getting jealous of a single friend's adventure, or wanting more experiences. All the while they were living what so many would kill to have. Spoiler warning, not one person I knew who did this didn't seriously regret it. They all did agree it absolutely was not worth it. Story 9. One factor that often destroys relationships but is rarely discussed is a lack of emotional intimacy. While people commonly focus on issues like communication, trust, or compatibility, the subtle erosion of emotional connection, where partners no longer feel understood, valued, or close to each other, can quietly but significantly undermine a relationship over time. Story 10. Honestly, I was in a 4-year relationship with my fiancé, and there was some mild verbal abuse, so I asked him to move out. He's living separate for a month now, and I miss him less and less. I guess peace sometimes is more important than love. Story 11. I don't think people really realize how much of a strain having kids can put on a relationship unless you really are working as a team. The sleep deprivation alone is enough to make anyone feel snappy, and if one of you is getting significantly more sleep than the other, resentment can build up. Moms often feel like they've lost their identity, while for the most part, the dads' lives don't change all that much. They still go out to work almost straight away. They can still go out or see their friends without too much forward planning. Then, being at home alone with a baby all day while your husband works can create feelings of loneliness and jealousy. Moms often become the default parent if their kids need to be off school for an illness or school holidays. It's often left to them to carry the mental load of the day-to-day things, and often left feeling like the household manager when their husband doesn't initiate getting things done without having to be asked things like taking out the rubbish, cleaning up, etc. I'm really lucky that my husband and I were a team from day one and always split the night feed so we could each get a decent amount of sleep. And I had a lot of friends and family nearby for me and my baby to spend our days with. I think being in lockdown during my maternity leave was a blessing because he was there during the day to give me a break if I needed it. And we've always tried to have nights off with just the two of us, either just for an evening or a night away, if we can manage a babysitter. Story 12. Losing who either of you are. Sometimes a partner will solely focus on or sacrifice for their partner or kids and lose their own personality and character in order to please or meet the needs of another person. Then they realize they aren't who they truly are and/or being true to themselves. That's why it's so important for partners to have their own individual time apart from each other and activities to do for themselves. I believe that's also where a lot of midlife crises stem from. Story 13. The fact relationships are often built on lies. When people are dating, they make sure to dress up at their best, wear lots of makeup, try to look wealthier than they are, hide all the weird sides of their personality, be the most selfless, and hold their partner on a pedestal. It can last for months or even years. Then as soon as the relationship gets seriously serious, the masks fall. The man who used to pay for very expensive dinners in order to impress, then makes a scene if the wife buys her favorite cookies instead of the cheapest brand. The woman who used to act submissive to feed her fiancé's fantasies, in reality wants her freedom and likes to spend energy on her career and her social life. The woman who never dared to mention babies for the fear of making pressure on her man really wants to be a mom so badly she can't even imagine a life without children. The man who pretended to be all for the dirty things and kinks and all because that's what a real man is expected to want may take out all of his insecurities around bed when he has proof that his girl is really a kinky type and wasn't just pretending to keep up the game. It would be so much easier if people showed their real self from the beginning. There wouldn't be so many couples who are unhappy and unable to keep passion alive because they find out they are not compatible only when they had spent so much time together that they basically built a whole life together, never truly knowing each other. Story 14. Not assuming positive intent. While people can be malicious, if you've surrounded yourself with good people, that won't be the case. The people closest to you don't want to hurt you. What can come across to you as patronizing or controlling or even cruel can often be good intent executed badly. And often, even if it's really obvious to you, to them, they might not even realize that they're being controlling or patronizing and that those behaviors are hurting you. By not assuming positive intent, you're already painting them as the bad guy. And by doing that, you're not getting the full story, and you're certainly not solving the problem. Story 15. I'm a divorce lawyer, and the answer is threats. Direct, implied. Any intimation of zero, I want you to do X, so I'll do Y unless you do. Threats are not cute. They are not setting a boundary. And they are not any combination of standing up for yourself or teaching people how to treat you. People can survive the wildest combinations of dysfunction, but literally every couple who's ever been in my office thought it was okay to threaten each other. Once you introduce that lack of safety with each other, it all snowballs, and we naturally threaten children constantly. If you don't eat your dinner, there will be no dessert. People act like it's normal, and then we're all surprised when our close relationships fall apart. Story 16. Not being able to compromise. Example from my ex and myself. I was fine with her talking to her male best friend. I wasn't fine with him not knowing about us and them texting 100-200 times a day and him being an obvious orbiter. I asked her if she wanted to dial down on her texting behavior because I felt uncomfortable and unvalidated. She told me, "No, I'm allowed to talk to him as much as I do. That's what you do with a friend. He's just a friend. The fact that you don't talk as much with your female friends now that we're together isn't healthy either." She then gaslit me into being jealous/insecure/controlling because I wanted to resolve it and see if we could reach for a compromise, and ended it with me. She went to him 2 days after we broke up. If we were able to reach a compromise, I'm quite sure we wouldn't have broken up that quick. We were only together for 5 months. I always value communication and being able to compromise. She saw that as a red flag. Story 17. People who grew up in broken homes. Sadly, so many people have no clue what a healthy, loving relationship looks like because they've never witnessed it firsthand. And social media feeds people ridiculous narratives on what it should look like. You can't teach someone things they just don't know. Story 18. Hardly talking about the relationship getting destroyed. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Nothing can save a relationship or doom it with more finality than communication or lack of it. Deep, serious, nearly unimaginable problems, talk it out. You could find a way forward. Slight issue getting on your nerves just barely? Talk about it or it's going to fester and ruin things. It can never be stressed enough. Talk to your partner. Story 19. The glorification of promiscuity for both sexes. Men are classically socially rewarded for being a stud or Chad who beds many women. There is also a sort of toxic social pressure to become this James Bond or Dan Bilzerian type. Women, on the other hand, are being increasingly influenced by toxic variants of rad-fem ideology to normalize extreme promiscuity, explore more, and settle down later, reject any form of traditional gender roles or nuclear family life trajectory, etc. Update. Note the downvotes. There's a reason why this is hardly talked about. Story 20. Children. You're not supposed to blame them for problems in marriages, relationships, but they're at the root of all kinds of fights. The cost of raising them, the sleep deprivation and exhaustion, the amount of cleaning and cooking and work that can never be divided exactly 50 all the time, the kids themselves manipulating parents, parents going in to have a child with different philosophies on how to raise and discipline kids, etc. Most of the couples I knew that split up were great couples until they had a child or three, and the stress got to them. Story 21. The assumption that once you love someone, you will never fall for anyone else ever again. Some people might work like that, most don't. Being in a committed, monogamous relationship means accepting that you won't be able to pursue future crushes, and both accepting that your partner will catch feelings for other people and trusting them not to act on them. Story 22. In terms of long-term relationships, priority and values. If one person prioritizes their career while the other prioritizes the community they live in, that can cause conflict if, say, a better job opportunity comes up in a different city. Or if one person puts a lot of importance on family so that they want to go to every cousin's wedding, but the other person doesn't feel the need to go to every family event they're invited to, then that could cause conflict due to travel or how they're spending a lot of their social time. These aren't deal breakers and could most likely be addressed with communication, understanding, and compromise. But they can often lead to breakups if people can't reconcile the things they care about in their life with the people they're in a relationship with. Story 23. Incompatibility. A lot of people don't know how to have that kind of conversation with their partner. There could be extreme differences in the relationship that don't come up until there's a clash. The sad thing is, it's one of those things that can end the relationship but doesn't really have a solution if one can't make a compromise. Story 24. Lying to make the partner date you. If you know you have a deal breaker for the other person, be a good soul and tell them before you start dating. Hiding it so they date you is the scummiest thing a person can do and a total waste of everyone's time. If you think once they fall in love with you, it won't matter. You are scum. Happened to me twice. 2 LTRs ruined because she hid deal breakers she knew I had in order for me to date her. Story 25. Lack of communication. It is something that should be practiced by every couple, especially nowadays. When you get used to not talking about your relationship, or even just simply asking, how's your day, there's a tendency that this will only a bigger problem and later ignoring each other. Constant communication is a key to keep the relationship flowing smoothly. Story 26. People, they said, but is hardly talked about. A lot of y'all on here talking about a lot of things. People talk about quite a lot. I'd say people build relationships based on things they like about the other, but maybe we should start talking about the things we don't like but seem to overlook because of their good qualities, then later get brought up or become issues. Now the person is upset because they think you never liked them or that you're fake because of it. Would help to start saving marriages, plus helps truly growing together. Story 27. Making your spouse your therapist. Your spouse doesn't need to hear every complaint you have about work or life or kids or friends or siblings. They don't need to tell you votes you had with people 20 years ago or struggles you had to find friends at summer camp in 1997. Story 28. The loss of attraction and excitement over each other's bodies. There's so much focus and discussion about communication and so on. Waking up and slowly realizing you don't feel the slightest physical attraction towards your partner and you are barely intimate with each other anymore. Even though she is someone you love deeply is horrible, sad, and it keeps hurting for years after because you abandoned your best friend. Story 29. We think of cheating as the ultimate betrayal, but there are so many other ways people can erode trust. We say we're going to change when we know we won't. We say we care when our actions say we don't. We spend money on things our partners might not approve of. Couples can come back from infidelity, and they can come back from betrayal, but there is nothing special about cheating that makes it worse or better than any other way we destroy the trust we have for one another. Story 30. Postpartum depression. I had a perfect relationship of 8 years until we decided to have a baby. It was the perfect decision made at the right time. We were both healthy and at the peak of our youth success at the time, perhaps. The baby was delivered, and it was like we hit the jackpot, exactly what we wished for. A quiet, easy boy with lots of smarts and social behaviors. It all went downhill a few months after delivery, as the doctors told me my wife has postpartum depression after doing CS, and this is normal. I don't know why nobody warned us if it is such a norm, so they said it is meant to last for 2 years at least. 2 years have passed at this point, and she is still a train wreck of emotional roller coaster every week. We live in 2 different houses nearby our son's kindy, and I've stood by her side all the way, hoping that one day I could keep my chin up when my son grows up and doesn't have to wonder why his family is broken up like I did. Story 31. Personality disorders. They're a lot more common than most people realize, and spouses who have one or more can be especially challenging to deal with. They are often histrionic, hypersensitive, indifferent to boundaries, and can be impossible to reason with. They're also disproportionately present in people with addictions. A common response to such a spouse is to shut down and not engage. This leads to resentment and is yet another reason to choose your spouse well, especially if you have even one parent with NPD, BPD, or any other form of chronically disordered thinking. We tend to be attracted to what's familiar. Story 32. The one thing all great love stories end up having is a sort of definition all its own. Since you're the character of your story, probably a good idea to define what you want, what you expect, and what things are just going to be automatic. I want a committed relationship or I don't is a good start. Story 33. Complacency. Your relationship is its own separate entity. It's not one partner or the other. It's the both together. When it's not intentionally nurtured, dates, romance, helping, attention, it will eventually die. You need to appreciate and nurture your relationship and prioritize it. Story 34. The hardly talked about part. It sounds cliche, but open and honest communication is key. No matter how good you think you are at lying, your partner will likely know that you're lying, or at the very least holding something back, and it creates an atmosphere of doubt. Just talk it out aloud and be honest. If the relationship can't handle it, then it wasn't meant to work out anyway. Story 35, talking about the more serious stuff. Sometimes you need space from your SO, and it's completely normal and fine. But when you don't say it, things can go from I need space to I need to end it. Be open about everything, even the sensitive stuff. BC stuff builds. And before you know it, a little annoyance can turn to resentment. Story 36. Trying to change your partner's method of parenting their child. Let them parent their child and deal with it. Or don't move in until the child has moved out. Yes, that may mean waiting until they're 18. But if you cannot accept the way they parent their child before you move in, do not do it. It will ruin your beautiful relationship that you have with your partner. Story 37. Workaholic behavior. Putting work above everything and everyone else, including oneself. Unfortunately, it doesn't end well for any workaholic. Disease, broken hearts, broken families, and lost time eventually leaves workaholics feeling helpless and overwhelmed with guilt for time lost. Story 38. Emotional silence and emotional withdrawal, i.e., not being open about feelings and using withdrawal of affection to manipulate. This is what has killed my marriage. I'm a Brit M married to a Yank, so I suspect this dynamic is exaggerated because of our inability to express our emotions because we are weird AF.